Welcome back and thanks for staying with us here on Beyond the Lockdown. The NPP manifesto is in focus. Hashtag Ask the NPP. They've dubbed it Leadership of Service, Protecting Our Progress, Transforming Ghana for All. A member of the Manifesto Committee is my guest tonight in the studio, Mr. Yao Buabiye-Samwa. He's also the Communications Director of the NPP. Thank you very much for your time here on Beyond the Lockdown. This is the very first time I'm having you here. It's my pleasure. So let's go back to Cape Coast. I have loads and loads of questions that have been sent in for you, but take me back to Cape Coast. What's new?
Thank you very much, and it's a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me. First of all, Cape Coast was about the whole world. So let me greet the whole world. Everybody who joined us, Ghanaians out there, investors, fund managers, governments, development partners. And then let me not forget Adentan constituency. I'm greeting Adentan constituency especially. So Cape Coast was also about thanking the party faithful, the party leadership, president and the vice president, those who are making things work. And then above all, of course, it was about the manifesto. Okay. So one may ask, what is the manifesto and its purpose? We tend to say that it's a social contract between the party and the people. I believe it's beyond that. I tend to regard the Constitution rather as the overarching social contract between political parties in Ghana, because that's what is driving all of us forward, and we are conforming to it. But this manifesto and the way manifestos are evolving now, I tend to see as a roadmap, one that gives direction for stability, direction for investors, guidance, so that partners, local and international, can predict, know where you are headed. Because people say that nobody reads manifestos. On the contrary, it actually attracts interest of late. It is attracting interest. And even where people don't read it, it guides the party in power. So Cape Coast was about the NPP telling us where we are going and justifying why we should be supported to go there of the entire country. So in 2016, I remember clearly that candidate then, Akufo-Addo, mentioned that that manifesto, which is change, agenda for jobs, is a social contract between the party and the people. Does it still stand? Yes, it stands. It binds you. Yes. Is it still binding? Yes, it does. That's why I'm saying that it's a larger, within a larger construct of a social contract. The larger social construct is the Constitution. But beyond the Constitution, this is a contract between us, but it also gives you a certain roadmap about what we are thinking, what we are doing. It's not just negotiated and stopped there. It points you in a certain direction. So given what the Constitution says we can do and not do, the NPP, after first 4 years under Nado, is saying that the next 4 years under Nado, this is where we are headed. So we are predictable. It's certain what we want to do and how we want to do it with all of us together. So people can buy in, people can plan, people can decide whether or not to go with us. And if they are going with us, they know what to expect. That's exactly what the manifesto is doing for us now. Well, so there are other issues that would just go into it, but more importantly for me is the promise to build an airport and a port at Cape Coast. I'll come to that shortly, but since this show was birthed out of the COVID-19 pandemic, your assessment, you feel that the people that came there were told, the last time you had an event there, you had about 5,000 persons coming, but this time the numbers were drastically reduced. Did you adhere to the safety protocols? Yes, we did to the best of our ability. The media was in the hall and noticed how we conducted ourselves. The seats were actually named. The seats were named. Now, there's always this thing about the external going in there. But a basic requirement is the mask. And clearly, the culture of mask wearing has taken hold. There were enough hand washing facilities. So at stake is the distancing protocols. And in the hall, that was meticulously followed. The hall was very large, and therefore we could easily seat 250 people with the appropriate social distancing protocols. But I admit that sometimes in the euphoria, when you get outside the hall, you are not quite able to engage.
Not just outside the hall, inside the hall. During the first break, for instance, we saw how people were interacting.
The first break,
total disregard for social distancing. The MC had to even remind those who were in there to adhere to
sometimes the
it.
euphoria makes you forget that 2 meters is 2 meters.
But COVID is real.
Yes, I know.
Of course.
It's real. And that's how come it's at the center of the manifesto. The core of this manifesto is COVID's impact, how it has affected us as a country, reducing productivity, reducing incomes, the restrictions and otherwise. How we are going to manage to grow an economy within those restrictions, taking adequate care, just like you are saying, doing essential things while still observing COVID, and how we are going to grow this economy back is at the centerpiece of this manifesto. Yes.
Well, I'm sure you saw the pictures about the president's tour of the Western region, for instance, Market Circle. You saw the numbers of people just pouring out with no regard for social distancing. Is that something that, because we've seen the president address us all the time and telling us to abide by it, how come when it comes to that, they're not?
I admit that we don't have a template yet. I also insist that the New Patriotic Party as a governing party in power, led by His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, has the first responsibility that we don't have standards beyond what we are delivering ourselves to ensure that the protocols are met. But we have a very novel situation where we are trying to prevent crowds and yet must go and visit a few significant places. And obviously when some people hear that the president, you can't prepare them. You can't assume that maybe the president arrives at Market Circle and say 2,000, 10,000, 20,000 people will pour out. But as much as possible, even before he gets there, the assumption is that protocols are being observed already. Okay. Because in the market, you should assume that protocols are being observed.
But that's not what we saw in the
masks are being given out. So the bottom line sometimes for me is that at least the mask must be on. Okay. Where there's certain spontaneity that you can't manage quickly, and there's going to be a rush in the initial instance, masks are mandatory. Okay. So one would assume that in places like Market Circle, other public places, the local authorities and the local opinion leaders are working on distancing already before their president appears impromptu.
And that's the pictures that are rolling on your screens right now.
Very much. I can see that it's tough.
A few of them wearing, but most of them also not wearing the mask. Yes, because we had a whole show on campaigning amidst a pandemic, and that ban has not been lifted just yet. So
we have to work on it.
Well, so from Market Circle, the president was in the, Cape Coast. On Friday, he had an interview on ATL FM, I think, and this question about an airport for Cape Coast came up. We know that the people went on a demonstration in March thereabouts on a no airport, no vote, spree. That question came up, and the president mentioned that they would have to justify why there's a need for an airport in Cape Coast. Then on Saturday, during your manifesto launch, on page 160, I've had the pains to go through it. That is there. That's you're going to get an airport, not just that, a harbour also for Cape Coast. So how is it that the president, during that interview, is it that he didn't know that that is contained in your manifesto? Who misinformed the president? You are a member of the committee.
No, the president is not misinformed. The interesting thing is that for several months, everybody is trying to get everything in the manifesto from the people working on the manifesto. Indeed, I had major difficulties from Thursday to Saturday, keeping it to myself, particularly on Friday. So it is not surprising the way the president spoke, because the last thing...
So you're saying it was kept away from the president?
It was kept away from the public. The manifesto content was kept away from the public.
But it appears it was kept away from the president also, because he would have known that it's in there.
You can say appears. The president didn't have to disclose what he knew on that day. He didn't have to. He didn't have to. Yes, because National Council itself, apart from the drafters and the president, very close circle who were involved, National Council itself had to adopt the manifesto before it could be put out. The National Council did that on Friday night in the presence of the president. Yes. So there's nothing in this document that is not owned by the New Patriotic Party, led by His Excellency, the President's government.
So then how do you justify the comment that he made on that radio station that day that the people of Cape Coast must justify why they need an airport? It appears that it was an afterthought sort of, but checking the book, it's in there. So how then are we sure, how sure are we that it's going to happen?
I also made comments that I didn't know anything about what was in the manifesto.
Okay.
I was asked about the title.
Okay.
And I made comments.
So the president lied?
The general, no.
Okay.
No. He didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He said justify. It is all wordplay. The important thing is that none of the things, concrete things in the manifesto was supposed to go out before the formal launch. That's the whole point. So all the individuals involved were bending over backwards to avoid letting anybody know what was in there. So we were all dissimulating. Oh, what is the title? I had a lot of media engagement from Friday morning right through to the morning. Your reporters before, and I insisted that 2 hours to the event, I was not going to tell them anything. You understand what I'm saying? So there is nothing hidden about this manifesto until it was revealed.
But the concern is that maybe it's just another promise just to win the votes of a swing region like the central region. That's how come it's been hurriedly put together. It's not something that has been well thought through.
You should hear the vice president on these matters and the engagement we had and the stakeholders where they did the triangular argument about the Cape Coast, Accra, Kumasi triangle containing about 60% of the business opportunities in the country, ongoing as well as potential, and the need to link them up easily at any point in time. And that now, international intermodal transport is such that you need multi-modal means to be very quick. It makes you attractive as a hub for everything. And the central theme of this manifesto is driving us towards being a regional hub in aviation, in logistics, in transportation, in rail, in digitization, in financial sector transactions, even in education, in trade. So we want to make it very easy to get around any part of Ghana at any time. It requires investment. Yes, we'll raise the investment of the private sector. And that's the other part. That's what I was saying, that the CARES program, the recovery from COVID, is at the center of this. And it envisages crowding in, bringing in 70 billion cedis from the private sector to help to develop all the proposals that we have. So you need to plan for the best and continue executing. That's exactly what we've done. We'll
delve deeper into it and show us the questions coming up. Had my turn of questions. I'm sure we'll just turn it over to our Facebook, WhatsApp, and then get the questions. But before then, let me introduce our guests joining us via Zoom. Tonight we have Edem Senanu. He's with the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Angel Kabonu is President, National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT. We also have Professor Godfred Bokbing, is the Dean of Students, University of Ghana, and also with the Business School as well. We have Samuel Sego, he's the President of Graduate Students Association, GRASAG. And then Dr. George Domfe, he's a development economist. He will also join us. So I have Angel Kabonu and then Mr. Samuel Sego as well. We have Dr. George Domfe. We'll get the rest also joining us. But let me start with you, Mr. Kabonu. This education is key for the NPP. I'm sure you've been listening in on the manifesto as they put the summaries out by the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. I'll take your quick initial thoughts on what you heard yesterday as against what you were told in 2016 and what has been delivered on.
Well, good evening to everybody. What I heard that was remarkable was the wildfire that all schools are going to have to be able to enhance ICT in the various schools. But we have been promised that all schools are now going to be connected to Wi-Fi so that the schools will have their connections and engage in the ICT teaching and learning. If that one comes about, then what it means is that we can enhance the ICT training and learning that is exposed us during this COVID-19 era. Of course, some promise was also made to the tertiary institutions with regards to non-guarantors of the loans and so on and so forth. I think I'll leave that one to the tertiary institution people talk about. All that I will call is that every policy of government should be economically sustainable so that it will not just be at the threshold of promise, but it will be promised that to be functional and that could stand the test of time.
But this particular Wi-Fi promise, this is not the first. They promised that in 2016. It was in the manifesto also. We've been checking on that. But thankfully, they raised it again and said that its plans are far advanced to make it happen. Is there any school at all at your level that has Wi-Fi?
Come again.
Is there any school at all? Because we're told in 2016 that this was going to happen. And during the summaries, the Vice President mentioned that plans are far advanced. Some contracts have been awarded or so. So I'm finding out, because this was promised in 2016. Which level are they? I'm sure this is the first time you're hearing. Is there any school?
I know it was in the 2016 promise. Mm-hmm. It did not materialize. Schools themselves, through their own initiatives, and if you recall, until recently, the PTAs were very present in the schools. They were levying themselves, and so most of the ICT labs that you see in our schools were constructed by the parent-teacher associations, or let me say bluntly, the parents. So that contribution was coming to sustain the ICT, the payment of connectivity and all that. Until today, let me say quickly that the Wi-Fi thing that was promised in 2016 did not materialize, and I hope that this time all promises made by the various political parties to education will come to fruition.
Okay, Mr. Kabonu there, but there are some concerns, at least speaking to some of your members. They feel that so much attention has been paid to the free SHS and the delivery of that promise to the detriment of the other levels of education, for instance. You share that view? These are some of the concerns.
I've heard that several, even as an association, as a professional body, we've also called on that. Interestingly, it's as if education is secondary education, but the foundation of education is basic public education. Basic public education. And if we're able to get the basic public education right and strengthen the foundation there, ensure that teaching and learning goes on by way of providing resources that is needed for instruction, then we don't have problem for secondary, we don't have problem for tertiary. When you look at infrastructure in the basic public schools, it is still very, very, very challenged. If you look at resources in the basic public schools, it is still very, very, very challenged. That is where majority of the Ghanaian children attend school in this country. So whilst we are talking about senior high school, we need to realize that when the foundations are weak, then we are creating a situation where children from private schools who are capable of paying school fees will then come to senior high schools and they'll be given free senior high school education. So there is a need for us for every people to go to my mother's village, somewhere called Ekelebi Duga, and go and check the state of the public basic school there. Go to a village in Yankpala, go and check the situation of the public basic school there. Go to Agsim and check the situation of the public basic school there. When we're able to establish a strong, efficient public basic school, we would have been solving practically our educational problems in this country. And I want to see the various political parties make promises to ensure the enhancement of our public basic schools.
Okay. Well, we are grateful for your time. That's the president of NAGRAT, Mr. Angel Kabonu. Drive safe. We also have via Zoom, Edem Senano is with the Citizens Movement Against Corruption, and of course, Samuel Sego, the president of Graduate Students Association, GRASAC. Samuel, let me come to you. This is big. Some of your members have said no guarantor. Before, you need guarantors who are also part of the scheme, who pay in the scheme, and then you have to repay the loan even after, right after national service and all. But the promise that we've heard yesterday, that will not happen. You only need a national ID, then you get your student loan, no guarantor. Your initial thoughts on what you heard, especially those that concern you.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me also extend my greetings to all graduate students in the country. The issue of the Students' Loan Trust Fund in its current state is fraught with a number of challenges, and any intervention by a political party to improve the scheme is highly welcome. However, such intervention must be properly situated in the context of diagnosing the actual problems beneficiaries and the scheme managers face in assessing and disbursing the loan, respectively. If the issue of guarantor is anything to go by, it is what gives the LCTF a leverage to actually give out the loan. Because in case of default, they know where to go to for their money. Are you getting me?
Yes, we're listening.
Now, in the absence of a guarantor, how are you going to ensure that LCTF will be able to recoup its already disbursed loans to the students? Now, the challenges that we face with the students' loan is in three forms. Delay in payment of the loan to the beneficiaries. As I speak to you, the 2019-2020 academic year has ended.
So even with the guarantors,
estimated to be about 10,000, have not been paid. Yes.
So even with guarantors, there's a delay in the payment.
Politic. Yes. Even with the guarantors, there is delay in payment. And really, we need to diagnose the problem properly. If you don't diagnose the problem and you just prefer a solution to an unexisting problem, you really run into a bigger problem, because the students' loan of the secretariat is struggling to recoup the already given out loans.
Okay.
And they have that leverage of relying on the guarantor's pension to get at least certain amount back. So if you remove the issue of guarantors, then we are creating a problem for the institution of SLTF, right? And the problem that students who are already beneficiaries are facing, we have 34,000 students who are on student loan currently. And the problem they are facing is the delay in the payment of the amounts, the loan amounts, the delay in payment. So as I was saying, second semester of the 2019-2020 academic year has ended, and a number of students have not received their loan amounts. And this is a problem, because we had reports from a number of institutions that students have had to defer their programs because they could not pay their school fees. And that is because they are on a student's loan, and the student loan scheme could not also disburse the money. Now, you may ask, how come the Students' Loan Trust Fund is unable to pay the money to students on time? The issue is that they rely on three sources of funding for their loan scheme, the CST. The second one is at least, or at most,
unfortunately, internet connection
of revenue. And the third one has to do with the amount of money they receive from previous loan beneficiaries.
Okay.
Now, after our engagement with the secretariat, what we have come to realize is that people are not paying back the money. That's the first problem. Secondly, the get fund amount that is supposed to go to them also doesn't come on time. And there's 1% of the CST2, they are also not being released on time to the secretariat. So there are actual problems. So if any intervention is going to come from any political party in terms of promises, we are hoping that there will be an assurance that they will improve the time period for paying of the loan, that we will not wait for the academic year to end before the loan is paid.
Okay.
Secondly, students who are unable to pay back the loan are complaining that the interest on the loan is failing, what do you call it? Treasury bill rate. Treasury bill rate plus 2% on the loan. And a student who has just completed school now, student
but now you have a grace period. Now you have a grace period to pay. You don't pay immediately. Yes, 1 year after national service. Is that not a good period for you to be able to pay?
I don't think it is really. I don't think it is really a problem of grace period. The average graduate now takes about 5 years to get any meaningful employment. So if you give the person 1 year, how sure are you that the person will get employment in the second year? There is no guarantee. So it may take about 4 years before the person gets employment, or 3 years, and the loan interest will be accumulating. So if there will be any intervention, we are looking at least reducing the interest to a fixed amount of about 5%.
Okay.
Of about 5%. These are things that we should be looking at in terms of interventions.
Okay. Samuel, we are grateful for your time. That's Samuel Sego. So they would rather prefer that the interest is reduced to a base rate of 5% rather than just giving them the grace period of 1 year. Mr. Boabing, if someone has been taking notes, we'll come to him shortly on that. But let me also bring in Edem Senanu. He's with the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Thank you very much for your time, sir, here on Beyond the Lockdown. So you are interested in the area of corruption and its fight. You saw the 2016, what we were told and what we've been told by the Vice President and the NPP in this latest manifesto. What are your thoughts? Do we have Edem Senanu? Okay. You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Senanu.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. We can hear you now.
All right.
So I was asking about, good evening. I was asking about your initial thoughts when it comes to the area of corruption.
Well, thank you very much. And good evening to my good friend, Yao Boabeng, as well. Truth is, the energy with which the NPP approached the issues of anti-corruption prior to the 2016 election appears to be clearly missing in this year's manifesto launch and all the statements. And having said that, there was wide stakeholder consultation. I'm not quite sure who was consulted, because there are areas that the anti-corruption group, especially civil society actors, would have loved to see put out there in this manifesto as things that they were going to deal with. I find that in the summary, they talk about greater transparency through digitization, curbing the fight against bribery and corruption through greater transparency in a digitized environment. And for us, the key issue wouldn't be about transparency, because we are seeing a lot of the things going wrong, the corruption already. It's not about the transparency. It's not about the digitization of what is going on. It's about the sanctions, it's about our processes to set the right precedent and finding people culpable so that it sends the right message. And so the emphasis in the manifesto would not appear to be where we would have wanted to see it. One of the key things, if I had been consulted, would have loved to see there is the issue of political party financing.
Okay.
We're in an election year, and a lot of money is going to be spent all over. And next thing we know, they get back into government, either they stay or somebody else comes. And whoever is there is going to have to try and, make all those gaps, plug them, and take care of those who have financed the party. there are areas we would have loved to see. They talk about continue to finance, anti-corruption institutions.
Yeah.
Yes. There are one or two where there was significant improvement in the levels of financing. But to the large part, after an initial good start, like Trudge, then things went back to normal and not much financing such that they could do much more was provided. So at operational level, even that which they sought to do, there are areas where one would have wanted a more clinical look at what has not worked at the operational level and how we can tighten it. They talk about witness protection law. I mean, that's a law where we've had at least 2 or 3 cases where people who have provided information, the culprits got their numbers and started intimidating and antagonizing them. So there obviously is a gap there. So there are things that could have been done better. And from my perspective, this is not what it doesn't bite. It's not a very strong anti-corruption manifesto and position.
Adam Sanano, thank you so much. He is the co-chair, Citizens Movement Against Corruption, joining us with what he also saw in terms of the summary and his thoughts on the area of especially anti-corruption. That's where he's well vexed is with the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. So a number of things come up. Let's start with Angel Kabonu's submission. He feels that there should be an economically sustainable promise that you make, for instance. So let's find out why you were not able to provide Wi-Fi to all the schools like you promised in 2016, that you are now saying that you're going to do it.
First of all, let me congratulate Mr. Kabonu. I've heard him in a very long while for once congratulating the government for some good initiatives. I'm excited.
Okay.
So, I want to congratulate Mr. Kabonu and then start from the basic school level, where we are going to implement the Gallop initiative.
Okay.
It's in the manifesto.
So you're saying that you're not neglecting the basic levels and all.
Now that the fruits of free SHS are entering tertiary level, we're empowering the tertiary sector, infrastructure, improving the learning environment and resources, including lecturer numbers, facilities, all that, and ICT, critical. And then we are going back to the base to beef up. And we threw out some numbers that we expect about 2.3 million pupils and about 76,000 teachers at basic level to benefit from the Gallop, which is the Ghana Accountability for Learning Outcomes project. It's worth, it's going to hit 260 districts and strengthen education, $290 million project. For me, the critical thing is implementation.
Okay.
If you implement this well, then at the end of the day, what you have is an integrated system, as we've always envisaged. F-cube, you have kindergarten, you have F-cube, you have free SHS, and then you enter the tertiary level. And then at the tertiary level, we brought in the loans. And we'll speak to that when we get to Samuel's comments. So you have a seamless process in building human capital for the knowledge economy. That's a basic requirement we are looking at now. We need to switch from the Gadgetsburg economy. And the only way we can is to build knowledge. And we build knowledge on the strength of our educational system. So in the next term, by the grace of God, the battle still being the Lord's, we expect that when we win, we are going to focus at basic level. Mr. Kabonu and all those other people will then realize that strengthening will improve free SHS and then will certainly enhance tertiary education.
So I was asking why we didn't have the Wi-Fi back then.
The infrastructure is ongoing.
You had 4 years to do that.
The infrastructure is ongoing. Digitization is a huge one now. It's huge. It has impacted several areas, and we have a whole chapter on how we are mainstreaming digitization to enhance whatever we are doing. And that one also impacts the accountability and transparency bit that my friend Edem was talking about. So digitization is key going forward. It will drag us beyond a certain point. And I must confess that one of the benefits of COVID is the realization that we must accelerate digitization. So even before COVID, the infrastructure was ongoing. where they are laying the fiber optic cables through the east and west corridors. And now we're in COVID and we had to do online learning and otherwise. It has become even more significant. So, Mr. Kabono, you will be getting your, what do you call it? You will be getting your
Wi-Fi.
Your Wi-Fi. Not only will you be getting your Wi-Fi, we are also going to encourage private sector local production of devices so that we reduce dependence on imported Android phones and otherwise. We will have local assembly of devices, creating employment out of the process. So in preparation too, we have reduced CST. And beyond CST, we are fighting behind the scenes. And maybe I'll let a few secrets slip. We are fighting behind the scenes to reduce ISP costs of getting the broadband data bandwidth to us. We are working behind the scenes to reduce cost there to a bare minimum so that this is a genuine input. This is a genuine utility that is not a means in itself, but a means to an end.
Well, the Vice President mentioned that data costs will be reduced also. Well, since we're talking about education, let's quickly bring in Samuel's comments on the no guarantee and all that. But they have concerns about it.
Yes.
They feel that there are delays in payments, even when they are beneficiaries.
I was one of the earliest beneficiaries where one had to get two guarantors. And Samuel will admit that, in quotes, it is hell. Putting somebody's pension at risk. And the default rates are so high. So one cannot dismiss the guarantor system as not an actual problem. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. And as I said, as an MP, I get regular calls from pensioners who want me as an MP to use my influence to take them off the hook, literally, that they are on, because the person they guaranteed for has flatly refused to pay or cannot be traced or otherwise. So they can't access their pensions. So you are solving a problem by blackmailing people who don't deserve to be blackmailed. They do a kindness and then they are stuck. So you are freezing pensions.
But you're creating another problem. You're taking that away. How are you hoping to recoup the monies? You know, he raised that
digitization of our society.
It's
moving at pace. Ghana card. It's not just. The Ghana card is the single most versatile unit of ID we have now, because it can identify right where you are based on your digital address. Okay? So,
but it's not everybody that has digital addresses.
But we are getting there. Yeah. We are building a society. That's why we're saying transforming Ghana for all. It's a transformational process. It's not an event. Development is not an event. It's a transformational process. Once you have 1, 2, 3 building blocks, you can hop up to 5, 6, 7, and then you're off. You don't hop from 1 and you're at 7. So we are saying that, first of all, we don't want anybody who is supposed to get into tertiary level education being stopped for want of an inability to pay money. And therefore, that first block where you have to look for guarantors who are not available because they've been bitten and they are shy, we want to remove that. So we will give you an entrant who is not already enjoying. Teachers and are not.
So there's a plan in recouping the money. Is there a plan in recouping the money?
There is a plan, and it will be laid bare. But the key thing is that access block, key financial access block, is being removed. It's being removed.
But you heard him say that the main issue is about the payment. And, you know, after graduating, even though you said that after national service, you have 1 year grace period before you start repaying the loan, he says that most of them, when they graduate, it takes about 4 or 5 years before they get a job. And that rather, what you should be concentrating on is reducing the interest rates on the loan repayment up to 5%.
I am not downplaying any of the problems, but I'm saying that they require sequencing and prioritization. The government of the New Patriotic Party, led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, intends to create jobs. That is the thread, the common thread that runs throughout our manifestos. Agenda for change, creating jobs, prosperity and jobs. And this one, leadership of service, protecting our gains. The gains we are making in establishing the pillars for growing jobs are what we are protecting. And we can't transform Ghana if we don't bring in the private sector to provide the jobs that we need. So we will not have the 5-year time lag that he is talking about. We are going to whittle that down and get rid of it. We are also firming up rent, ability to identify, credit management, and all that. So we are also going to be dealing with the default envelope area. We want to facilitate and enable Ghanaians. We don't want to restrict and constrain Ghanaians.
Okay.
So we will let you go to school. We will find imaginative ways of ensuring that you pay your way through school. And we'll make sure that as a society, you benefit the society and your debts to society are paid back.
Well, let's hear from some Ghanaians on the streets of Accra and also in Cape Coast on their thoughts.
Looking at what is going on in the country, when every government comes in power, they try to deliver something. But looking at the promises that they gave and people voted for them, they've not been able to deliver much. They've done some, but it's not up to expectation. To be very honest with you, they've done some, but it's not up to expectation. But it is just they are politicizing things. It's left with just 4 months to election. And then if they want to do it, they may do up to some step, but I don't think they can finish. We expected Nana should have done better than this. Because we all love Nana so much to come to power to change things for us. But, you know, looking at all what he promised us to do, we've not seen much.
They do some like some, but they've not fulfilled some too. So we can see they've done 100% job. They've done some, their part, what they can do, they've done it. And what they can do too is also the campaign promises. It's possible if the money is there, it's possible. But if also it's part of like campaign promises, that one too is up to them.
The me who is because America can buy my baby. So we be and how betimi aka said your pebia my yen ultimate yen but do one idea. The Becani Pano do one and the Omatimi this a free education. One district, one factory, in the account. Oh, my. TSA moment like a crash of car, so I mean, would you say, obey me a deliver? Yeah, I can. Am I?
I'll give them 4%. Because you can't borrow over $100 and something billion, and then what do you do? It's free teachers. After school, what did they do? They'll come for work. They'll come and look for work. Instead of you to create work for us, you are telling us free teachers. Fine, it's a good idea, but by the time of the implementation is very wrong. Give us work. When you give us work, we can cater for our education. It's first things first. You see, when you misplace your priority, you will think you are doing something, but you are doing the wrong thing. They will just come and give us polished promises, nice ones, and then when it's time for them to show evidence of whatever they've done, they will tell you that they've started. It's in the pipeline. They will never complete anything.
They did some, but they didn't do all. Maybe due to some circumstances and stuff, that's why. When they don't make those policies, like we won't know what they're about to do, so they have to put something down for us to know. But they'll do, but not all.
Marsh sheds na men ye de. Question dom wajiji yesika. Sikana wajin. We trebi no mo wadamo. Yezi da do nyina lezina mba message mba hwemba. Ekwakan wa wasombe ekakan wasombe so abrabo ye ya mu sika no ye bra na yenya yenya so a ona na ye dinda no ho ye di bi kwa hospital ye di bi trade benzi ye di bi hwehemba na ye kunum na bibia na so okazina wa na oromfa ma ya na wa ha ohen.
Some of your views there here in Accra and also in Cape Coast, the ordinary Ghanaian has been speaking about your manifesto in 2016 and what you've been able to do, and then the latest promises that you've made. Also, Adam Senanu also mentioned that he was looking forward to a political party financing, for instance, something that would have, really hit them when it comes to the issue of corruption and its fight, for instance. Your quick comments. We'll take a quick break, then we get into the questions.
Comments.
No, you can do that.
Yeah, Adam should look at the overall framework, the overall sector, and in particular, look at the raft of laws. The difficulty we have there now is implementation. The political will, I think, has come. Once you establish an office that has capacity, independent capacity to prosecute, then you've demonstrated political will. So now you need officers who will build that institution, and the institution will not function overnight. So going into the second term, we expect that having resolved the bottlenecks with the Office of the Special Prosecutor, accommodation, whatever, we will see some bite. We have also passed
you agree
transparency
that
rules.
you agree that as it is now, there's no bite?
Oh, look, there are cases in the courts being run from the Attorney General's office, cases involving monies in excess of $250 million.
We are talking about the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
Yes. Yes, so you are restricting that to Office of the Special. Yes, I think so far the office has spent an inordinately long time building itself up. And that perhaps...
Is it serving the purpose for which it was set up?
I have used this phrase
because it was supposed to investigate the contract for sale. PPA, we still don't know what's happening.
It's an independent office. I have made this remark before, and I'm afraid I'm going to make it again, and then the occupier of that office may come up. I said that even whilst nurturing the institution, there's a possibility of plucking some low-hanging fruits. So you build both. Like we came in and fixed the economy and delivered free SHS and all the other things we have done that some haven't yet quite seen and they feel in their pockets already. So yes, it is something all of us can question, but it is not the responsibility of the president to control that office, because by law, the law is very clear.
But this is a baby of the president.
But you cannot control the baby that you have made independent. That's why I'm saying that political will to give that independence.
He's asked that office to investigate a number of cases. Shouldn't we know where we are with them?
So we should ask the office. We shouldn't ask the president. If you ask me, the office will say that I'm interfering with their independence, their lawful independence. So ask the office, engage the office. Let the office tell us what they are doing. Because I believe that that singular office, coupled with the RTI, which sat in Parliament for over 20 years, and again, by dint of political will, this Parliament has passed, coupled with RTI.
That's non-operational just yet.
The first thing is to pass the law. Then you have a basis for establishing an institution. Then you have civil society engagement to ensure that it happens the way it should happen. Just like Adam talked about witness protection and what has happened. Once you talk about it and agitate, then everybody comes on board. This is the society we are building.
But was this your expectation when the Office of the Special Prosecutor was being set up?
I'm an anti-corruption activist. I also had expectations that overnight we would see something. That's what I'm saying. I've had exchanges. But the gentleman has been to Parliament and explained himself succinctly that even the kind of investigator he wants to use has to be brought up from scratch. He has to find young people.
Do you have time on your side for that to happen?
Well, that's why I'm saying that it is not us anymore. We have done our bit. The president promised to deliver an office with the legal power to be independent of politically exposed persons. We have done that. So well, now it is for the institution to justify its existence.
But you've heard your opponent, the flag bearer for the NDC, for instance, has mentioned that knowing what we've heard, especially in the area of anti-corruption fights, he's not surprised because from what we've seen, a number of cases and all, they've just been cleared, he says. So he's not surprised that they're not seeing much when it comes to the
Perhaps Mr. Martin Hamidou should investigate and finish investigating the government official one. And then we'll see whether he's surprised or not.
Even that, we haven't heard anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that Mr. Martin Hamidou, maybe he's watching us. Maybe a friend of his is watching us. Mr. Martin Hamidou, the former president candidate John Mahama says he hasn't seen anything from your office. Can you please investigate and come to a quick conclusion on who the government official one is and the person's involvement or otherwise in bribery scandals to do with the Airbus acquisitions? Let's see what happens.
And that's the main thing when it comes to corruption for you?
I think the main thing is that we've put the infrastructure in place. The framework is there. It's a process. Let's
take a quick break at this point here on Beyond the Lockdown. We are right back with Mr. Yaw Boabian-Samoa. This is Beyond the Lockdown here on the JoyNews channel. We're also on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. We're on Facebook and, of course, myjoyonline.com. It's time to take your questions. A million apologies that I've delayed in doing that, but I'll take as many as possible. And Mr. Yaw Boabian-Samoa has also pledged to be brief in his responses. Then we can take as many questions as possible. Our first batch of questions is on Facebook. Nilimo Isaac says, in your manifesto launch, I heard a little about the fight against corruption. Is it the case that the government has lost the fight Or when will government tell Ghanaians who was behind the Australian visa scandal, since the president referred the case to the CID, and that of the contract for sale saga, missing excavators, PDS, and many others? We have this one from Foga in Jelukofe and Keta. He says, you have not built Keta Port, as said in your 2016 manifesto. You now want to build Cape Coast Port? Why should we trust NPP? Kwame Delali says, it seems to me that now the focus in terms of education is only on SHS. Basic schools are left behind to struggle. No allowances or policies to boost the morale of hardworking teachers. We go on WhatsApp now, and Selikem Korostar in Tudobo says, good evening. I want to ask the Communications Director of Governing New Patriotic Party a question. Go ahead. Prior to the 2016 elections, they promised the good people of Anglo and Keta constituency that if they win the election, they are going to build a harbour in Keta. But that has never seen the light of day, and they make another promise to the people of Central Region. I want to ask, will the Keta harbour happen before the Central Region? Okay, so I have two questions on the Keta harbour. They said that has not happened, yet there's a promise to the Central Region. At what point will that happen?
I want to assure them that it is happening. It is actually happening. The land acquisitions have all been done. There's an anchor investor who has been secured to deliver, first of all, a jetty for their own purposes. And then a chief executive, above all, who is going to do the feasibility planning and mobilize the capital investment, is in place.
So what has he been doing? Because he was appointed way earlier, before we have been told about the land acquisition and all.
Exactly.
What has he been doing?
He's been involved in clarifying the land acquisitions, concluding them, and also doing the negotiations for the
It's been how many years already?
Oh no, how many years have we been in power? Only 3.5 years.
Yeah, when was he appointed?
Public policy, public policy sometimes crawls, but it gets there. Our policy is to open it up, like I said. And the Keta Basin is critical because it has not only fishing facilities, but oil.
So you realize how scared the people of Central Region are, because Keta, all these years,
Keta will get it.
Nothing has happened. You've appointed a CEO, you say, and then...
I'm assuring the people of Keta that the work on their port is very, very far advanced. The size of that requires a lot of initial work, the fees and everything. Everything is going on.
But it's surprising that the CEO has been appointed all this while, and he's taking all this while. How many years to acquire a land? He's still acquiring a land?
As communications director of the party, I will encourage the people of Keta that I will personally ensure that the CEO reports to them. They are key stakeholders. The CEO must report progress to them. But I am assuring them that there is progress and they will get their port. I have very, very important interest in that place as well. Because I know a chief who is directly involved in delivering it. And the land, he has an interest in the land area and all that, and the assembly there. You know, it's a long process, but they will get their port. It's not exclusive. The Cape Coast port is not exclusive of the Takoradi one, and there are different scales of ports. There are ports that are heavy duty, and there are ports that are medium size and all that. The Keta one is going to be a specialist port because oil is a key thing, and fishing, and then cement. Yes, industrial activity.
And that's not enough to prioritize it by now?
It's priority.
Okay.
It's a huge priority.
Okay.
Yes, we've had only 3.5 years. So by the time we finish 8 years, it should be very far advanced. There should be construction, there should be use. And then when we get into 12 years and 16 years, you have a fully fledged operational port delivering oil.
Well, let's talk about corruption now. There was another question on a number of issues, a number of scandals that we still don't have conclusion or closure to. The Australian visa scandal involving the now Deputy Information Minister Pius Hajide. That matter was reported to the CID. They were cleared. What exactly is the status of that issue? The contract for sale, I was mentioning that earlier, which involves the PPA former director. We have the PDS, they mentioned that as well. A number of issues.
PDS corruption. I believe that we are growing. We have to unpack corruption, put the objective corruption fighting issues on the table, and then the political part of corruption as well. The politics of corruption is for mileage. Oh, this is corrupt, that is corrupt. And then once you're in opposition, you don't have a responsibility for proving what is corrupt and what is not corrupt. So you can scream corruption about everything, including administrative lapses and other things. So it is the duty of the governing party to demonstrate that it's on top of its game. I've heard
and you're on top of it?
Yeah, I've heard and read comments about whether or not reports of these investigations should be published and otherwise. Perhaps I should say that there are debates going on about the impact and import of certain disclosures once you print them, whether the people are innocent and you print them and they impacted. So those disclosures. But the key thing is that we can only become more transparent. We can only grow. And those institutions we are putting in place are getting us there. Senanu talked about increasing support to the corruption fighting institutions. On average, we've increased their things by 27% on average since we came into power. Some have more than that. Others have a minimum of that. We've increased the capacity of the Auditor Generals enormously. We've set up, like I said, the OSP. Now, we have also passed RTI. Not only that, we are considering the Public Officers Conduct Bill. That has also been in Parliament for 17 years. That is going to make major changes to asset declaration and otherwise. So we are putting in place a solid legal framework. Once we get to a certain point, this is a dynamic that rolls on its own. So the issues about incumbency, accountability, and whether you are attacking your opponents only or otherwise, we'll get beyond all those points because now we have an instrument that cuts both ways. So
you're fighting corruption and you are hounding out of office the Auditor General because he's a thorn in the flesh of the government.
We are not hounding the Auditor General. I will not even go into the explanations. All I can say is that the Auditor General's office is an institution. It's not a personality. And therefore, we ought to find an Auditor General who is capable at any point in time. And so the administrative rules that the Auditor General of the day...
You ought to find. You have one already.
The Auditor General of the day implements accountability and transparency rules, administrative, substantive, laws, PPA, and all that. Those rules, that office must also be subject to.
Okay.
So if you have administrative rules about leave, that office must also be subject to those rules. And therefore, once you get to a certain point, because you're Auditor General, you cannot bend the rules to find others culpable of the same rules. So when I say we find another auditor, I'm not saying we are imposing. I'm saying that our society as a whole must see that office as the institution that it is and must be able to deliver institutionally succession that carries on better than before.
Okay. So the issue about the basic schools, we earlier talked about it because Mr. Kabonu raised it and then you mentioned that you're paying attention to that. So let's get into the next batch of questions. We have WhatsApp questions. This one is from Edward Biney in Ananso. He says, what's the fate of NAPCO trainees coming 2021 since no provisions were made for them in the manifesto as to mechanization of beneficiaries? We have, okay, so another one from Edward. He says, what will be the source of finance for all the promises in the manifesto? Kinsley says, want to know how the NPP government intends to deal with students who are unable to pay up their student loans should their moratorium or repayment elapse. Awal Kasim Nungwa says, with the unemployment quagmire, we are likely to have a large chunk of people facing this challenge. This means debt accumulation. How is the government going to deal with the debt scenario? Well, so that's the next part of questions. NAPCO trainees, they say they had nothing about plans for them. What happened to the trainees?
I like these three sets of questions because they are all futuristic. And they go to the nub of what we are facing as a society, employment, and how we sustain it. NAPCO is a solid attempt at creating employment. It's an ongoing process, so we didn't have to. The implicit in the manifesto of the delivered is that we are implementing NAPCO. So the outcomes will continue to come forward. You shouldn't be too worried about that. We will be ahead of our curve there. It doesn't have to be a detail in here. Yes, so that will come up as we go forward. The next two questions are to do with the financing of the loan fund in the event of default. Again, the policy is here. The detail will be out through the institutional pipeline, as the institutions which are responsible will be engaging the public on those things.
So he's also asking about the payment of the loan. That's what you've mentioned, but the source of financing of your budget, of your manifesto, sorry.
Exactly. The source of financing, this particular one, what we are looking at is the CARES program.
Okay.
We have the COVID situation where there's low productivity, people are losing their jobs, revenues are down, government itself has low revenues, and therefore government was forced to lift the fiscal stability barriers and go beyond and spend. In the entire world now, one of the best known instruments for fighting COVID is to remove deficit restrictions. So we have also removed deficit restrictions. And therefore, we are going to fund our recovery from COVID, from deficit sources, as well as positive revenue sources, including oil revenues and the little incomes that we get. We have been diligent. We have been careful because we have made quality choices in what we spend our money on as a country. And that's how come we're able to keep the lights on and still give away free electricity. It's not free. You are getting it free, but government is paying. It's a choice government has made as a compassionate government to invest certain kinds of resources in that, including the water, right? Including food. All the things we are doing now, including the business alleviation measures. Because you have whole sectors being wiped out, like the hospitality industry, catering and all that. So if you don't boost them, they cannot come back up. How do you boost them? Where do you find the money from? You must deficit finance to start. But beyond the deficit financing, you expect that they will also begin to grow and crowd in their own resources. So the CARES program projected funding of 100 billion over 5 years has 30 billion component from the government and 70 billion from the private sector. So the government will act as a catalyst to spring up private sector investment into these processes.
Okay. Well, there was one also on the unemployment quagmire and debt accumulation as a result, and how you intend to resolve that.
Unemployment has come up before. And I'm saying that we will be cutting down the unemployment profile. Samuel, was it Samuel? Samuel Sego talked about 5 years not getting a job. Look at the situation with the nurses. You have hospitals which were shells, no nurses, no doctors. From 2012, we came in and we've employed nurses from 2012 up to 2018. We are still employing. So we've cut down the lag to less than 18 months, right? All the health sector professionals, we've cut down that lag to less than 18 months. Then you have teachers. We are investing so much.
But some of them are still demonstrating. I'm sure you've seen the latest this week alone.
In 3.5 years, you're not going to get everything. Now we have Lend-Lease coming up. We are now saying that most government services are going to be privatized. The money that government spends upfront will go to the private sector. So now you have an opportunity to be a retail or a purveyor of lease items to the government. It will create employment. We are talking about officializing work and pay. You've heard of work and pay. You have. If haven't you? Work and pay is where somebody brings in a used car, several years old, and tells you that it's worth 20,000, but you don't have money to buy it off.
We all know work and
pay 40,000. And then you work for 3 years. The car is a wreck because it was old before it came. You've paid 60,000. And then the person says, you've defaulted, so give me my car back. You lose out. Now, individuals, owners, can get a made-in-Ghana vehicle, brand new, get a government-backed lease to work and pay the money back. That's a sector worth over 500,000 jobs. We are revolutionizing that sector and securing it, including artisans, sprayers, fitters, welders, all of them. If you add all of them, you are heading towards 800,000. And that sector is going to be secured with the arrangements that we are making in terms of Lend-Lease. Nurses, teachers, all professionals are in a position to actually buy cars on Lend-Lease. You pay small, and finish paying, and it's yours.
Okay.
And it's all going to be backed. So we are going to create employment. We're creating employment in the housing sector. We pay your rent for you. After we give you a loan, when you finish school, we pay your rent for you. You are stabilized.
Well, I have more questions, but let's go for a quick, as our final break for Beyond the Lockdown, and then we'll wrap up with your the rest of your questions right here.
We need an airport for Cape Coast. Not just any airport, but an international airport for Cape Coast. You know, what we've realized is Cape Coast is lagging behind in a whole lot. I can say we voted for more than 30 years, since 1992. And I can't point out a single factory in Cape Coast. Not a single factory. Why should it be so? I want this government to do something unprecedented for Central Region.
Well, interesting comments there. We'll take the final batch of questions, including a story from Ms. to tell me. So let's go through the questions. That's the final batch, and we have just about 4 minutes to go. Let's go through the questions. So this is a WhatsApp question. Christiapia in Botiano says, what's the government's projection of commercial vehicles to be produced by the automobile industry, and how feasible is it for the industry to replace the many rickety vehicles in the system? Won't it be a storm in the teacup? Peter Ndodowa says, please ask the NPP Communications Director how come they did not mention anything about corruption and galamsey fight throughout their manifesto launch. Is it an admission that they are overwhelmed? I have the last one on Facebook. MFA ask NPP Communications Director the understanding of fighting corruption is by targeting its opponents. We hope they will leave power peacefully. When they lose power, and they will make Ronaldo available for the debates. Okay. So that's all time will allow us in terms of your questions. Thank you so much for bringing them in. So one on the commercial vehicles and how you're hoping to get rid of the rickety ones in the system.
I want to assure the public that we'll come out with a full interactive on the automotive industry segment. Full interactive.
Okay.
Also on the corruption questions. We believe we are fighting corruption better than at any time in our history.
And there's no mention of galamsey and all.
Including when people were being shot. So we know what we are doing, and we'll share it with Ghanaians. Yes, including the galamsey and everything. We'll come out with extra. In 2 minutes, I can't. I want to gossip.
Okay.
I want to expose.
And then also, is corruption, your way of fighting corruption is targeting your opponents. And are you going to make the president available for a debate?
Is that corruption?
It was part of it.
No,
it was the last question.
Let me gossip. The people who are chasing a debate can continue.
You're attacking your opponents by fighting corruption, he said?
No, we are going to come out in full on what we are doing in the corruption sector. And you will realize that we are very far ahead of our predecessor governments where corruption fighting is concerned.
So the debate is out of the question. That's the question on the page. Is there? That's Humphrey's question. Would Nanado be available for the debate?
It depends.
It depends on what?
Not on what I'm going to say now. What I'm going to say now is very important. It's about employment.
Say it and
it's
let's
about
go.
employment.
Say it quickly.
A very powerful Ewe lady in the Manifesto Committee. I'll mention her name.
Okay.
Says, why are you all focused on creating government jobs? What happened to the private sector? Everybody wants to get to the military, and then the vice president says, it's true, but that is why digitization is making a big difference. So we are using digitization as a platform to bring in the private sector to create real jobs. Lisbeth Ohene, very, very powerful Ewe woman in the NPP who determined the direction that in the end the manifesto took to prioritize private sector investments, prioritize digitization, so that we can build a society that doesn't depend so much on government. Government will facilitate the private sector, pay its bills on time, ensure that contractors get contracts, all those things. Then the private sector can create the jobs that we need and cut down the problems with jobs in the public sector. Everybody wanting to be a policeman, a soldier, a civil servant, and all that. We don't have enough spaces.
Well, thank you. That's all time will allow us to say about someone. And that's it for tonight's edition of Beyond the Lockdown. The manifesto of the NPP has been in focus. I am MFAPO. Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Yeah, we have a soft copy as well. Thank you so much for your time. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com.